Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad wa barik wa sallim. Alhamdulillah wa kafa wa salamun ala ibadi alladhina istafa, amma ba'd. Inshallah, today we'll be discussing a little bit about i'tikaf. We'll get right into it, and towards the end, I'll just mention a few additional points. After that, Brother Usman, he will read out the guidelines for this year's i'tikaf, inshallah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So, first we want to discuss what i'tikaf means. I'tikaf, in Arabic, you see what used to happen was the Arabs, before Islam, they used to use the word in a certain way. And then after Islam came, Islam gave an additional meaning to that word. So originally i'tikaf comes from these two words, al-uqufu or akfu. Now, the literal definition, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses this word in the Quran, فَأَتَوْا عَلَىٰ قَوْمٍ يَعْكُفُونَ عَلَىٰ أَصْنَامٍ لَهُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Banu Israel, the children of Israel, the people of Musa alayhi salam, after they crossed the river, after they crossed the sea, then they came upon a nation, يَعْكُفُونَ عَلَىٰ أَصْنَامٍ لَهُمْ. This nation was firmly worshipping their idols that they had. So i'tikaf, the meaning of being devoted to something or firmly holding on to something, that meaning is found in the word i'tikaf. Another meaning of the word i'tikaf means to prevent. وَالْهَدِيَ مَعْكُوفًا أَن يَبْلَغَ مَحِلَّهُ. So now hadi means the sacrificial animal. And when the sacrificial animal was being brought for Hajj, for Umrah, but the kuffar, the mushrikeen of Makkah, they prevented the animal from entering into the haram. They didn't want the animal to enter into the haram. So the meaning of prevention is also found in this word i'tikaf. So when a person, he's performing i'tikaf, he's doing two things. One thing, he's holding firmly onto the masjid, he's staying in the masjid at all times. And secondly, he is preventing himself from leaving the masjid. So this is where the word i'tikaf comes from. The Islamic definition of i'tikaf, that was the way the Arabs used to use it. When Sharia, when we're speaking about i'tikaf in a Shari'i sense, according to Sharia, what does i'tikaf mean? I'tikaf means هو الإقامة بنيته في مسجد تقام فيه الجماعة بالفعل للصلوات الخمس. It means to remain with the intention of i'tikaf in a masjid wherein 5 times daily congregational salah are held. Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, Hazrat Hudayfa radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and Hazrat Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha say, وَلَا اعْتِكَافَ إِلَّا فِي مَسْجِدٍ جَامِعٍ. So there's 3 points of importance in this definition. One, a person has to have the niyat of i'tikaf. So if a person is staying in the masjid without the niyat of i'tikaf, he's not in the state of i'tikaf. So very important is the niyat that I'm consciously making my intention to stay in the masjid for i'tikaf. Secondly, he has to stay inside a masjid. It can't be inside a shop, it can't be inside, a musalla. In a musalla, yes, but this is where the other condition comes in, where 5 times daily congregational salah are held. So if only Fajr and Isha salah are prayed inside that masjid, that musalla, then you can't make i'tikaf there. And these 3 Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'een, they say وَلَا اعْتِكَافَ إِلَّا فِي مَسْجِدٍ جَامِعًا. Their fatwa is that you cannot perform i'tikaf except inside such a masjid where congregational salah are being performed. People gather for congregational salah, like this one, for example, Masjid Jami'. Okay. So there are certain spiritual dimensions of i'tikaf. When we start Ramadan, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the whole year, more or less, a person is sinning. He's engaged in things that he is not supposed to do. And we all know we're part of this group. When Ramadan comes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, more or less, He split the month into 3 different parts. The first part is His rahmah, His mercy. The second part is His forgiveness. And the third part is emancipation from the fire of Jahannam. This first part of rahmah, this rahmah is very unique in the sense that we are such sinners. We are not even deserving of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness. In the second 10 days where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness is there, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy, forgiveness is throughout the months, but especially in these times. We as sinners are not even deserving of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness. We as sinners are not even deserving to be emancipated from the fire of Jahannam. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the first 10 days, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rahmah is so vast and so wide that He allows sinners such as yourself and myself to get away from all the sins we have been committing. Not only that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rahmah was the cause of us fasting the entire day. Not only that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rahmah was the cause of us performing tarawih salah at night, increasing our recitation, performing dhikr, adhkar, learning about Islam. This was all because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rahmah and the mercy of Ramadan. So the first 10 days were more or less just an excuse. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can bring us to the second 10 days, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can forgive us. Because when a person, he wants to give someone a glass of milk, and that person's cup, that person's container to receive that glass of milk, it's dirty. So a person has to clean out that glass first before he can receive that gift of milk. So the same way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, using these first 10 days, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cleans out our bowl, cleans out our glass, so that we become special recipients of His mercy and forgiveness in the second 10 days. But that's also another unique thing. Because we see a surge in the beginning of Ramadan in the first 10 days, and then we see a surge in the last 10 days, but during the middle 10 days, where we need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness the most, the reason why Ramadan is coming, we see a dip, and not so many people come. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from this. Anyways, this computer doesn't have the fonts that I installed, but it's not a problem, right? The spiritual dimension of i'tikaf, you see, there's certain acts of worship that have an appearance of showing your love to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let me give you an example. An example will be for when Eid al-Adha time comes, and it's mustahab, it's preferred, and the ulama recommend, and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentioned in a hadith that he shouldn't cut his nails, he shouldn't cut his hair. Another example is when a person is in the state of ihram, when he's performing umrah, when he's performing hajj, he's not allowed to apply perfume, he's not allowed to do certain things, restrictions. So these actions are only to show that, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'm madly in love with you. Whatever you tell me to do, it might not make sense, it might be against my logic, it might be against my reason, but oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'm doing this because you told me to do it. The ulama mentioned why they say not to cut the hairs, not to cut the nails, is so that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy is descending, more mercy can fall upon more parts of the body. So from amongst one of these acts, i'tikaf, complete devotion. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, 24/7, 365 days of the year, my mind, my focus, my goal, my purpose in life is the dunya. And I'm also surrounded by people whose focus in life and whose goals and whose purpose is the dunya. So I want to take myself out of the dunya, and I want to spiritually go into this sort of meditation inside the masjid, inside your house. One severs all the ties with others. He's not with his family. He's not with his mother. He's not with his father, his brother, his sister, wife, children. He severs all ties with others, and he strengthens his relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He places himself in the house of his beloved. And he makes an earnest effort to win the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When he's Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, before he received nubuwah even, remember he used to always go to Ghar Hira. He always used to go to the cave of Hira for meditation purposes. Same concept as here. After he received nubuwah, he would constantly stay in the masjid. Hadrat Ata al-Khurasani says that a person performing i'tikaf is like a person putting himself in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and saying, "Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, until you don't forgive me, I won't leave." So he's like a beggar in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what i'tikaf is. Question, how many days did the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam perform i'tikaf for? Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam i'tikaf, when in the beginning, the Prophet ﷺ, he had a special attachment to i'tikaf. Every single year he would perform it. This is a very strong sunnah of Nabi Kareem ﷺ. He never left the sunnah except for a genuine excuse. So in the beginning he kept i'tikaf for an entire month. And what's the purpose behind i'tikaf? The purpose behind i'tikaf itself is so beneficial. Right? I'tikaf in itself is an ibadah maqsuda, means it's something to do, it's a desired ibadah to perform. But the real purpose behind i'tikaf, as we'll discuss later, is to find Laylatul Qadr, which is in the last 10 days. We'll discuss that. So Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he kept i'tikaf for an entire month because he didn't know the date of Laylatul Qadr in the beginning. So in order to receive the blessings of this day, he stayed the entire month. Because then there's no possibility, did I miss it, did I not miss it? You got the whole thing. And then one year he kept it for 20 days. The remaining years, he kept it for 10 days. After he received that knowledge that it's in the last 10 days, he kept it for 10 days. When Ramadan, he couldn't keep i'tikaf, he made it up in the month of Shawwal. So he performed qada i'tikaf. That's where we get all our masail of qada. 1 year due to traveling, he couldn't perform i'tikaf, so the following year he kept it for 20 days. So these are all different narrations. There's a few ahadiths we want to go over regarding i'tikaf. Hadrat Abu Salama radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates that once I went to Hadrat Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu ta'ala anhu and I asked him, won't you come with us towards the date palm trees? You know, we just want to talk, we want to discuss. He's a sahabi, they're both sahaba radiallahu ta'ala alayhim ajma'in. So Abu Sa'id radiallahu anhu, he went out and he asked him, and Hadrat Abu Salama asked Hadrat Abu Sa'id that, you know, tell me what you heard about Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and about Laylatul Qadr. So Abu Sa'id Khudri replied that once Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's messenger, he had performed i'tikaf for the first 10 days of Ramadan. And we did the same, we also stayed with him. Then Jibreel alayhi salam came to him and said, whatever you're looking for, it's ahead. It wasn't in the first 10 days. So then Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he did i'tikaf in the second 10 days of Ramadan. And the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala alayhim ajma'in, they also stayed in the second 10 days. And then Jibreel alayhi salam came to him and said, that which you are looking for is still ahead of you. So on the morning of the 20th of Ramadan, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he gave a khutbah. And he said, whosoever has performed i'tikaf with me so far for 20 days, he should continue. Because I have been shown Laylatul Qadr. But I have been made to forget it. It is in the odd nights of the last 10 nights. I remember that I was prostrating in mud and water. So this is reported in Bukhari. Lessons we can derive from this hadith is that the night of power, Laylatul Qadr, was kept hidden from this ummah so that they may exert themselves in worship in the last 10 nights. So we all know the story of Laylatul Qadr, why it was taken away. He came out to inform the people regarding the correct date of Laylatul Qadr, but then he found two people arguing. So this arguing deprived the ummah of such a blessed piece of information. But then Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, perhaps that's better for you also. Because a person, he might be sinning his entire life and then he just might think, okay, I'll get Laylatul Qadr and then that's it. The rest of the day, holiday. But because we don't know, now the last 10 days we'll be able to maximize and fully, truly understand the potential of Ramadan by worshipping throughout the entire Ramadan, especially the last 10 nights. Normally it's difficult to pray every single moment of the night, but when a person is in i'tikaf, they will be considered to be in a perpetual state of worship, meaning his eating, his drinking, his fasting, his sleeping, every single moment, even if he's relaxing, that moment is counted as ibadah. And everything in Laylatul Qadr, if we do manage to get Laylatul Qadr, then imagine praying salah on that night. You get the reward of salah for 1,000 months. Giving sadaqah on that night, you get the reward of giving sadaqah for 1,000 months. Doing dhikr, saying one subhanallah on that night, subhanallah. You get the reward of 1,000 nights. I mean, you can't afford to lose this opportunity. And the best way to ensure that you gain this opportunity is to perform i'tikaf. The Prophet ﷺ, he was free of sin. He didn't commit sin, he was known as ma'soom. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected him from committing any sin. That being said, the Prophet ﷺ, being the most atqa, the most God-fearing, the most pious, the most purest and closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, still we see first month, in order to search for that day, he spent the entire 30 days in i'tikaf, and then 20 days, and then 10 days. And he used to continue to do this until he passed away. We need it definitely a lot more than Nabi Karim sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. عن ابن عباس رضي الله تعالى عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من مشى في حاجة أخيه كان خيرا له من اعتكاف 10 سنين ومن اعتكف يوما ابتغاء وجه الله جعل الله بينه وبين النار 3 خنادق كل خندق أبعد مما بين الخافقين. Hadrat Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he narrates that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, whosoever goes out to fulfill a need of his brother, it is better for him than in being in nafil i'tikaf for 10 years. Nafil i'tikaf for 10 years. Whosoever performs i'tikaf, now this is what we want. This is the part of the hadith that we're concerned with at the moment. Whosoever performs i'tikaf for one day, seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will place 3 trenches between him and the fire of Jahannam. Each trench distance is the distance between the heavens and the earth. So our main goal, our niyat, our intention should be, we want to be like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How he used to do it, we want to do it also. If he performed last 10 days, we'll perform last 10 days. But if a person, we understand that we're living this dunya. We understand that some people have jobs. We understand some people have school. This is the last year, I believe, that the college schedule doesn't conflict, and this is the last year college students will be able to perform a full 10-day sunnah i'tikaf before Ramadan goes further back into school schedule. So everybody has situations. Everybody has to do things. Everybody can't just get 10 days off from work. There's things that have to be done. But still, that being said, if you can't get everything, it doesn't mean you should just leave everything also. You should try to get as much as you can, because this is something that we can't afford to miss. عن ابن عباس رضي الله تعالى عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال في المعتكف هو يعكف الذنوب ويجرى له من الحسنات كعامل الحسنات كلها. Hadrat Ibn Abbas رضي الله تعالى عنه narrates, and this is so amazing. This is a special ibadah only performed at this time of the year. You can't get these concessions, these deals at any other time of the year. The person performing i'tikaf, he abstains from sins. He receives rewards for the good actions that he couldn't do. Because someone might say, there's so many things, we could be feeding the homeless, we can be, there's a janazah salah, whoever performs janazah salah, he gets qirats of reward, such and such amounts of reward, Mount Uhud equivalents, so we're missing out. But then this hadith is saying, that person who's in i'tikaf, it might seem as though he's missing out on those other opportunities to receive reward, but he will get the same amount of hasanat as if though he himself performed those actions. So a person's not going to janazah, a person not visiting the sick, he'll get the reward of that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us these opportunities. When a person is in i'tikaf, every single second of his is in worship. Sleeping, eating, relaxing. One gets reward from abstaining from sins. Even though he can't do all the good deeds that he could have done outside, he still receives rewards from them. These are the lessons from our hadith. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إن للمساجد أوتادا الملائكة جلساؤهم إن غابوا يفتقدونهم وإن مرضوا عادوهم Hazrat Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, some people, they're like awtad. Awtad, you have a tent and then you hammer in nails to make sure the tent stays in place. Some people, and that peg is firmly implanted in the ground. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is describing the believer who's attached to the masjid as sort of like the peg of the masjid. He's always there. Nothing takes him out of the masjid. His concern, 24 hours, how can I get back into the masjid? How can I get back into the masjid? On the opposite, some people, they treat the masjid and they dislike the masjid, dislike staying in the masjid. For them, it's like a fish out of the water. But so these pegs of the masjid, awtada, these pegs, their companions, the people who are punctual in the masjid, their companions are the angels. If for some reason they couldn't make it to the masjid, the angels go around and look for this person. What happened? What was, is something wrong with him? Did he fall into a hardship, calamity? If they fall sick, the angels visit them. So subhanAllah, this i'tikaf allows us to become a peg of the masjid because we're staying 10 days and our names are written on those registers. Ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he would perform i'tikaf in the last 10 days of Ramadan. We know this. Nafi', the student of Ibn Umar, rahimahullah, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, Ibn Umar, would show us the place where the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would perform i'tikaf in Masjid al-Nabawi. So Nafi', he never saw Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So he's going to his teacher, Ibn Umar, who was the son of Umar radiallahu anhu, and Ibn Umar would show him that this is the place where Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he would pitch up his tent, and this is where he would perform i'tikaf. And Nafi', he narrates that Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu said, when Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would perform i'tikaf, a bedding or a bed would be placed for him behind the pillar of Tawbah. So this is reported in Ibn Majah and Ibn Khuzaymah. This is Masjid al-Nabawi. This is Ustuwanatul Wufud. This is Ustuwanatul Haras. And this is Ustuwanatul Sarir. Sarir means bed in Arabic. Sarir. So over here, this is the Wufud, Hirs, and this is the pillar of Tawbah over here. So behind the pillar of Tawbah, you have Sutun al-Sarir, the pillar of Sarir. This is where Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he would, I'm not sure of the exact place, but this area would have the bedding of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And these three pillars, interesting, these three pillars, half of it's inside the Rawza Mubarak, and half of it's inside Riyadul Jannah. So if we just take this is the pillar in Masjid al-Nabawi, and then it says, هذه, this, Ustuwanatus, and then Sarir is over here, is very elegant calligraphy, Sarir. So this is a pillar of Sarir. The lessons we learn from this hadith is permissible to put bedding in the masjid, and if need be, even a small bed, tents, whatever. Permissible for a person to make i'tikaf at the same place in the masjid every year, on condition you can't force people to move and you can't be of inconvenience to others. Another hadith, Hazrat Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha narrates that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam used to sit in i'tikaf in the last 10 days of Ramadan, and I used to pitch a tent for him. After offering the morning prayer, he used to enter the tent. Hazrat Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she asked him, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, to make i'tikaf inside the masjid. He granted permission, so she put up a tent. Hazrat Hafsa radiallahu ta'ala anha heard of it, and she pitched up a tent. And then Zainab, the other wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in, when she heard about what they did, she pitched up another tent. In the morning, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he noticed the tents, he says, what is this? Ma hadha, or kama qala alayhi salatu wasalam. He was told of the whole situation. Then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, what made you do this? Al birra tarawun, that are you showing your piety? Remove them. I don't want to see it. It was removed, and he didn't say i'tikaf in that Ramadan, and he practiced i'tikaf for 10 days in the month of Shawwal. So we'll go over this hadith. He first granted Hazrat Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha permission, but then forbade her. Hazrat Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, her hujra, her room, was directly connected to Masjid al-Nabawi, as we know. Right, so when she would go in i'tikaf in Masjid al-Nabawi, she wouldn't have to go through the men's area. She wouldn't have to go out in front of the men, right? She could just go into i'tikaf straight from her house. This was not the case with Hazrat Hafsa, Hazrat Zainab radiallahu ta'ala anha. They had to go past the area of the men first, and then they would go to where Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam was in that i'tikaf area. So Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when he told them to remove the tents, it was because of this reason, that they should still be observing the parda, they should still be observing the rules and ahkam of hijab. So this is what Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam didn't like. Her house was right next to the masjid. It wasn't difficult for her to go into her room. Other wives' houses were at a distance. They would have to come in and out in front of men. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, this is not piety. And he told Hazrat Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, first the other wives were moving their tents, but there might have been a fear if Hazrat Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha kept her tent, that, they would have felt something in their hearts that this is not fair. So he removed Hazrat Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha's tent. And to make Hazrat Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha happy, he also removed his own tent. So Hazrat Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha doesn't feel hurt. So we learned to seclude yourself in curtains or a tent is permissible. Same thing, it shouldn't cause inconvenience to others. It shouldn't make the masjid congested. There are some masajid which are very small, so if everybody comes in with their deluxe sized tent, then it would be a problem. A wife shouldn't sit in i'tikaf without the permission of her husband. Even if the husband gives permission, he can take it back if there's a valid reason. We'll discuss that a little bit later. A few more hadith. Hazrat Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha narrates, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would sit for i'tikaf, he would bring his head, remember, it was connected to the masjid. He would bring his head close to me while his feet were inside the masjid. He would not enter the house except for human needs, to relieve oneself, etc. So the lessons we learn from this: it is permissible to wash the head and comb the hair on condition that one stays in the masjid and water flows out of the masjid. Someone from outside can also do these acts for the ones performing i'tikaf. This part, if a part of the body, say for example a person just puts his foot outside, it goes out of the masjid, it doesn't break your i'tikaf, right? As long as the majority of the body is still inside, such that if a person from the outside, he's looking, a third person, he's looking, and he sees a person, he'll think that he's inside the masjid, then that person is still considered inside the masjid. If the onlooker, third party onlooker, he looks and he thinks that this guy's not inside the masjid, his whole body is outside the masjid, then he's not going to be considered to be inside the masjid. And it's permissible to leave the masjid to relieve oneself. Hazrat Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha narrates that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would pass by the sick while he was performing i'tikaf. He would continue to walk without diverting, and he would ask him regarding his health. So when you do go out, for example, to relieve yourself, or there's a certain necessity that you have to attend to, and you're coming back, and along the way you ask regarding someone's house, or you're speaking with someone, but you're still actively engaged in going towards the masjid, then your i'tikaf will not break. It is not permissible to leave the masjid without a valid excuse. If while walking one talks or asks regarding the sick, then it's permissible. It's not permissible to take a different route for this purpose. Meaning to visit the sick. You're not allowed to do that during i'tikaf. So if you take a different route so you can ask someone regarding, then that wouldn't be permissible. Hazrat Safiya, the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, went to Rasulullah ﷺ to visit him in the masjid while he was in i'tikaf in the last 10 days of Ramadan. So Nabi Kareem ﷺ was in i'tikaf, so she spoke with him for a while. Afterwards, she got up in order to return home. Nabi Kareem ﷺ walked with her right outside of the masjid, to the boundary of the masjid. When they reached the gate of the masjid, opposite to the door of Salama radiallahu ta'ala anha, there were two Ansar, two members of the Ansar. They were passing by, they greeted Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They said Assalamu alaikum, and he told them don't leave, and said, this was at night, right? So then he said, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that this is my wife, Safiya bint Huyay. Both of them said, Subhanallah, O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's messenger, we would never think something bad about you. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, Shaitan reaches everywhere in the human body as blood reaches everywhere in the human's body. I was afraid that Shaitan might insert an evil thought in your minds. So the lesson we can gain from this hadith is, if someone comes to visit a person in i'tikaf, it's permissible to talk to them. So if, say for example, you're here for 10 days and one of your family members, relatives, they come, you can speak with them, not a problem. A woman can also come to visit the husband, but should not come in front of the men, and the laws of hijab and veils should be adhered to. If someone comes to visit, then the mu'takif, the person performing the i'tikaf, can see them out to the door without leaving the masjid. So you can take them all the way out without leaving the masjid. And it's permissible to talk privately with the wife in i'tikaf. And lastly, we should try to remove doubts from the minds of people. We should never put ourselves in such a situation where some people might accuse us of something wrong, something indecent, right? Ittaqu mawadi' at-tuham. Just stay away from those areas where someone might have a chance to point a finger at you. Another hadith, this is Hadith Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. This is her saying that the way you perform i'tikaf for a person, you don't visit the sick, you don't participate in funeral prayers, you don't have any relations with your spouse, you do not leave without extreme necessity, and there is no i'tikaf without the fast. You have to fast while you're doing i'tikaf, even for qada, meaning if your i'tikaf breaks, you have to make qada later on. That qada you have to fast during that i'tikaf in order to perform it. And there's no i'tikaf except in masjid. La i'tikaf illa fi masjidin jami'an, congregational masjid. Now we're going to get into the fiqh part. That was just a few hadiths pertaining to i'tikaf. Who can perform i'tikaf? Number one, you have to be Muslim. If you want to enjoy the special favors and the rewards, obviously you have to be Muslim. This ni'mah and blessing is not for the kuffar. You have to be sane. So that means you can't be insane. It's self-explanatory, right? And a woman, she should perform i'tikaf in the confinements of her own home, in the room where she usually prays her salah. And for this, the permission of the husband is necessary. Where can i'tikaf be performed? These are the best places you can perform i'tikaf. Number one, obviously Masjid al-Haram. The Haram, Kaaba, best place to perform i'tikaf. If you can't perform it there, then Masjid al-Nabawi, Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's masjid itself. If you can't perform there, Masjid al-Aqsa is the best place. If you can't perform there, then a masjid where the Jum'ah Salah is performed along with the 5 daily Salahs. So Jum'ah plus 5 daily Salah. If you can't pray in a masjid there, then a masjid where the 5 daily Salah are performed. There's different types of i'tikaf. Wajib, if someone made a vow. Mannat, meaning, for example, if I get this job, then oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I swear that I will perform 10 days i'tikaf, for example. So it wasn't wajib, it wasn't obligatory on him before, but because of this statement, he makes it obligatory on himself, and this one's wajib, meaning he has to do this. He has to do this. So if my son gets better from his illness, whatever the case may be, then you can make it mu'ayyan, meaning you could say a specific date, then on 13th, 14th, 15th of Dhul Qa'dah, I'll perform i'tikaf, or you can just keep it, I'll just perform 3 days i'tikaf. Sunnah i'tikaf is the last 10 days of Ramadan. Right now, you can understand this in a few ways, last 10 days of Ramadan. One way you can understand this is a person who performs all 10 days of Sunnah i'tikaf. This is the highest level of the Sunnah of i'tikaf. Meaning, if you want that exclusive reward for Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's 10 days i'tikaf, you have to perform 10 days i'tikaf. But also another way to look at it is Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to perform i'tikaf in these last 10 days, which means that any time a person he performs i'tikaf in these last 10 days, it will be considered to be sunnah. So even if he can't spend the full 10 days, if he does 1 day, 2 days, spends the night, spends the morning, spends the evening, but just the fact that he's spending i'tikaf in these 10 days, he will be receiving the reward of Sunnah i'tikaf. Obviously, it's not of the highest degree where that 10 days, that rigorous Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam stayed for 10 days. There's a special reward for that. He won't receive that reward, but he will receive the reward that Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to perform i'tikaf in these 10 days. So because I'm performing i'tikaf in the same time period where Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to perform i'tikaf, I will be receiving a reward that is not received in any other time of the year. So that's Sunnah last 10 days of i'tikaf. So if a person, he can't perform all 10, but if he performs 1, 2, 3, whatever the case may be, he will receive the reward of Sunnah i'tikaf, but it won't be that Sunnah i'tikaf. Nafal, any amount of time throughout the year. So when a person he comes, we should all have the niyat of i'tikaf right now. Whenever a person spends inside the masjid, few seconds, few minutes, few hours, anything, will be considered to be nafil i'tikaf. When a person comes inside the masjid, he can have the niyat of i'tikaf. This is nafil. Sunnah i'tikaf, this starts on day of the 20th. Let me just write that down. Day of the 20th. So it starts on the night of the 21st. Night starts from Maghrib Salah. Right? Day of the 20th before Asr finishes. So I believe this is Saturday, right? Next Saturday. So next Saturday, whoever wants to perform the 10, if he wants to receive the reward of that 10, he has to be here, preferably, so he can just set up everything, set up all this stuff, by Asr Salah. So just in case any emergency happens, he can go back quickly, because if he is not within the masjid boundary, by the time Maghrib Salah comes in, if he's in the parking lot, if he's taking his stuff out of the car, and he intends to perform Sunnah i'tikaf the 10 days, and if he's not inside the masjid proper, then he has to wait another year. So, we can't do anything to help that person if the person doesn't want to help himself. So the best thing to ensure, because think about the amount of time and the difficulties, hardships. He got off from work, he made so many arrangements, and if due to a few technicalities he's not able to come inside during the proper time, then he has to wait an entire year and he won't receive that reward. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from this, right? So then Saturday, Asr Salah, everyone should be here. Preferably by carpool, because the people who are staying for the 10 days, in order to free up parking space, it's better if their cars aren't here, or they can park in the welder's lot. And if a person doesn't know where the welder's lot is, that's another complication. So if he's coming during Maghrib Salah time, and then the announcement is made, those people who are performing i'tikaf, their car should be parked in the welder's lot, and then there's a few minutes before Maghrib and he's looking for the welder's lot, then it's just complications. Asr time is your best bet. If you can take out 10 days, you can take out an hour for Asr time, inshallah. Right? You have to stay within the boundaries of the masjid. Inshallah, Brother Usman and the other brothers will explain what that is. There's a difference between the masjid building and masjid proper. Right? The masjid, this area that we're in, everything you hear about the masjid, you should respect the masjid, and you should, voices shouldn't be raised in the masjid, and all the fadail of the masjid, that's this area right here. The entire area is the property of Darus Salam, but this is Darus Salam Masjid. So if you go, the bathrooms, obviously they're not part of the masjid, right? So the offices, they're not part of the masjid. So for example, if you pray salah in the office, you will not be getting the reward of praying inside the masjid. But if you pray inside the masjid, you see what I'm saying? It's a whole different technicality. Even on the sister side, right? The sister side, because these classrooms, they're meant to be classrooms, right? And the sisters, they teach throughout the entire month. And sometimes the sisters, they can't come to the masjid for the entire month, right? So even that area where the sisters are praying, it was designated as not part of the masjid. So if a person, he goes into the sisters area, his i'tikaf will break, because it's not considered to be the masjid. Right? So this is just, you have to be inside this building. What is a necessity? What constitutes a necessity? To relieve oneself to use the bathroom. If someone has a fard ghusl, he's in the state of janaba, he's not allowed to stay inside the masjid. He has to leave the masjid immediately. So this is a genuine excuse to make a ghusl, right? And the ghusl of Jumu'ah. Some scholars deem it impermissible for the ghusl of Jumu'ah, right? But it's permissible, meaning the scholars, we follow the opinion that it is permissible to take the ghusl of Jumu'ah, right? To make wudu, for example, a person always wants to be in the state of wudu, so he can go out for wudu. Getting food if no one is available to bring it, but inshallah there'll be tons of food, right? If a person's the mu'adhin, back in the day, and in many Muslim countries also, they go outside to call the adhan. The adhan is called outside. So if you're a mu'adhin, you have to call the adhan, you have to get out of the masjid. But if you have to call the adhan, this is deemed as a valid excuse, right? If no Jummah was performed in that masjid, then to go to Jummah at a different masjid. Jummah is necessary upon, the males, so they have to go for Jummah. This is a necessity. But after it's done, after all of these activities are done, then a person has to immediately come back to the masjid. And na'udhu billah, if something happens, fire, tornado, earthquake, and the masjid collapses, then you can get out of the masjid and then, go to a different masjid, etc. But that is a genuine excuse. If the i'tikaf breaks, there is a difference of opinion, right? Some scholars say in Sunnah i'tikaf you don't have to make qada. Some scholars say you do have to make qada. So I will go over if you have to make qada. We can ask when i'tikaf actually starts. All these masail can be asked to Mufti Minhaj inshallah when he's here. So you have to make up that one day's i'tikaf only, qada. So if there's time in the same Ramadan, then you sit one more day with the intention of qada. If there's no days left for Ramadan, then sit any other day while keeping a fast. Qada of all 10 days is not necessary. Some people say that, if you miss a day of the Sunnah i'tikaf, then, you have to do all 10 again. That's not necessary. Just only that day. Etiquettes of i'tikaf, you should spend as much time as possible in seclusion, in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is your chance to develop that connection. We should try to speak as less as possible, try to engage ourselves in Quran, nawafil, dhikr, stay away from social media, stay away from anything that could drain our time, that can take our attention away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They call it the web, because it's a web of shaitan, because you get caught. That's what they call it. They know people will get caught. It's called a web, right? That's one thing. There will be programs, because we also understand that, to keep a person, if a person is not used to that type of lifestyle, to be engaged in dhikr and Quran and, all these acts individually is quite difficult. So that's why there's these communal programs that people can take part of. Inshallah, a lot of people will be participating, listening to lectures, learning about Islam, reading Islamic literature, etc. What you can do in i'tikaf, you can eat inside the masjid, you can sleep inside the masjid. If you have to buy and sell that which is necessary, you can perform that inside the masjid. You can speak to Mufti Minhaj about that. Cutting hair, that's permissible. It's permissible. You shouldn't do it here, like here, inside the masjid, right? Talking, not futile talks. Nikah, meaning the nikah can be performed. A person can perform a nikah, a person can get his nikah done to someone else. Obviously the actions, the relationship with the spouse, that's categorically prohibited. Changing clothes without exposing the private parts, checking the sick, prescribing medicine, teaching lessons of Quran, sewing clothes, etc. Just like the acts in i'tikaf, a person, he's just completely turned into a monk. And he doesn't talk to anybody, and he thinks that's an act of piety. It was in the previous Sharia, not in our Sharia. Right? Engaging in futile talks, bringing merchandise to sell into the masjid, taking up so much space, paid work, etc. This is more or less the i'tikaf schedule of 2019. They will start off with, right before Fajr Salah, there is individual worship, time for tahajjud, time for dua, then Fajr Salah, then you have the morning du'as, and Mufti Minhaj will have a Q&A session. There will be a box in the lobby, I believe, and anonymous questions. You can put your questions inside the box, and then after Fajr, Mufti Minhaj, he will address those questions inshallah. Recitation of Surah Yasin and the du'as. This part over here, 5:30 to 12 o'clock, rest and free time. This part is extremely important, because this is, you're not sleeping at night, more or less. Your schedule in Ramadan is completely different. Because we say, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for you, I'll make my entire life go upside down. So this is our schedule now. So if a person doesn't sleep during this time, he will not be able to participate in the rest of the activities. He's going to be groggy, feeling tired throughout the entire, and he's going to be deprived of all these other ibadat. So this is sort of like a mandatory sleep time. Some people, the young, the youth and whatnot, they might want to stay awake during this time, but not recommended. This is like the mandatory sleeping time. 12 o'clock to 1:15, right before Zuhr Salah, individual Quran recitation. You will be waking up. After Zuhr Salah, there will be the Aqidah workshop, very important, especially in today's time. speaking about beliefs, atheism, secularism, modernism, all of these things, very important. And then from 3 o'clock to 3:45, we'll have a tajweed workshop going over the last 10 surahs. If a person can confidently go over the last 10 surahs and he has a grasp over these last 10 surahs, the tajweed of the last 10 surahs, then the rules he learned while learning how to recite the last 10 surahs, he will be able to sort of extrapolate those rules on the rest of the Quran. And it's hoped that he can use whatever he learned in these last 10 surahs and he can apply it to the rest of the Quran. And then you'll have rest and individual worship. This is another time to, then you'll have your Asr Salah. After Asr Salah, they'll be going over purification of the heart. This is tasawwuf. All of these amrad qalbiyya, meaning this diseases that we have in our hearts that can't be diagnosed medically. You need a spiritual doctor. So these diseases that we have in our hearts of lust, of greed, of anger, of takabbur, of pride, all of these illnesses, how we can treat these illnesses, how we can become a better person, how we can become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because you can't become, for example, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, that person who has even an ounce of takabbur in his heart, he won't even smell the fragrance of Jannah. How to get rid of this takabbur and how to realize that we're all in need of this. This is what this program is for. Then we'll have individual dhikr and collective and individual dua right before iftar. After Maghrib Salah, dinner, the brothers are encouraged not to perform long awabin because it sort of backtracks the entire progress, because as Brother Usman will explain, that's a multi-purpose hall. We'll be eating there. That hall has to be cleared up very fast because that's the same multi-purpose hall which is fulfilling a different purpose. The woman will be praying Tarawih Salah there. After that is Isha Salah and Tarawih Salah. Then there's a tafsir after Tarawih Salah and break individual worship. During the even nights, because during the odd nights it gets pretty crowded, so during the even nights there will be a youth only session, different speakers will be called, there will be youth qiyam and whatnot. After that we'll have durood upon the Prophet ﷺ, the 40 durood. And after that 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock you'll have suhoor, and then you'll have your individual tahajjud salah. You might say that, okay, wow, there's an hour for tahajjud, an hour for suhoor, why is it so long? But actually it's because there's so many people. At home we might be able to do it in 5-10 minutes, but over here, because the sheer volume of the people, it takes a little bit longer. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all our i'tikaf. And now, this is a time where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you have a business, and the business, they have to get stock for the new year, and you have to clear out your old stock. So what you do, you sell everything at clearance prices. So i'tikaf, one example the scholars give is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving out blowout prices. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving His rewards so cheap. We just have to learn how to take from the treasures of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, if a person, what do you do when a person is extremely ill? You don't just take him to the hospital. You take him to ICU, intensive care. We are all extremely ill. We are not spending a Ramadan the way we're supposed to be spending a Ramadan. We all know this. So we are extremely ill. So i'tikaf is our intensive care. So if we feel like we are those people who are extremely ill, then we should try our best to spend as much time as we can in the masjid. Jazakumullahu Khairun. I'll pass it on to Brother Usman. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, we're just going to go over some of the logistics of itikaf to make it easier for everybody during the entire 10 days. So inshallah, everyone should plan on arriving around Asr time on Saturday, May 25th. But definitely everyone has to be here before Maghrib. Please get dropped off. We do not have room for cars, extra cars, for the whole 10 nights because we'll be having a lot of guests coming in throughout the 10 nights. So if you cannot get dropped off, all cars must be parked in the welder's lot. and we'll have volunteers who can direct you where to park your car, but please try to get dropped off by a family member. So you arrive before Maghrib, and then you'll check in the lobby. We'll have a desk there to check in. Everyone will be getting a wristband. Anyone in Itikaf must be wearing a wristband at all times. You'll also get a sticker for the rack where you'll keep your belongings. We have two areas. One area is downstairs, and one area is in the side prayer hall over here on your right-hand side. The elderly will be sleeping there, and they'll keep their belongings there. There's no kids allowed there. It's only for the elderly. And also, additionally, the upstairs bathroom, the handicap bathroom that is in the entrance area, that's also just for the elderly because it's difficult for them to go up and down the stairs. So please keep that in mind. You'll put your racks, your belongings in the racks, and then one thing, when you have your belongings there, please either keep your phones on you or you can turn them into the office, and please keep your wallets and any other valuables with you at all times, because these storage areas are open most of the time. We do close it right before Isha, and you won't have access to your belongings from Isha until after Tarawih, after the tafsir ends. That's for the safety of your belongings, and so people who are coming for Tarawih don't go in the areas. So every day, all the bedding needs to be put away before Asr time. That's because we need to get the downstairs areas ready for iftar. So before Asr, all of your pillows and your bags and your sleeping bags need to be put in the rack area. That includes the side prayer hall where the elderly will be, the seniors will be staying, because we also use that during Khatam nights for overflow. So everyone needs to do that. Dinner will be right after Maghrib Salah. So as Maulana Imran said, please don't spend some extra time praying Nawafil and everything. You can do that after you have dinner. The reason being is we use that hall for the sisters' Tarawih too, so they pray Isha there and Tarawih there afterwards. And so at least 30 minutes before Isha time, we need to make sure that entire area is cleaned up. You'll see we put a big tarp there. We need to make sure it's vacuumed, ready for the sisters so they can pray and they don't have to do anything. After dinner, there'll still be plenty of time for you to come upstairs and do your extra ibadah. And that area will be unavailable until after Fajr then. So you can put your belongings back down after Fajr. That's when everyone will take rest, is after Fajr time. Just going through the schedule. Again, for the youth, no one under 18 is allowed to stay here alone. If there's any issues with people staying up, we will either ask you, we might have to ask people to leave if the youth are staying up after Fajr. They spend a lot of time and it disturbs the people who are trying to rest downstairs. So please keep that in mind, and do take part in these all the sessions, and just comply with the volunteers if they're asking everyone, especially during before Asr. We really need that place clean. So we're going to go through the walkthrough just to show everyone where the boundary lines are. So we'll just take a walk upstairs and